NBA drafts are a really strange thing. Every year we think that we know for sure who the number 1 pick should be. We all think that we have the top 5 best prospects down. But then we eventually realize that, wait a minute, Andrew Wiggins and Jabari Parker are not only actually not the next big things, but Nikola Jokic, a 2nd round pick, is the star of that draft class. After a couple of years go by, we'll look back and notice that the order of which players were drafted looks almost random. You're always gonna find random no-names scattered somewhere in the top 10, and the best player usually isn't the first picked. But given that the draft happens so often, we tend to forget just how wrong we always are. We are distracted by the prospect of another upcoming draft instantly making headlines and causing us to lose focus on the last one, and we only continue to dedicate months focusing on the next year's class. I swear, I see just as many headlines about the draft as I do about the playoffs while the playoffs are happening. We just talk, get it all wrong, and talk some more to help us forget that the last time we all talked, we got everything wrong. Rinse and repeat year after year. That's just the way drafts go. And that's the way we end up with guys like Markelle Fultz, Mo Bamba, and any other massive NBA bust you can think of. But does it always go this way? I mean, surely at least once we've been right about a majority of the draft. At least once the number 1 pick was the best player, the number 2 pick was the 2nd best player, the number 3 pick was the 3rd best player, and so on and so forth, right? I mean, we talk about drafts all the time. There's been 73 of them, so which one has been the closest to perfection? I looked through all 73 of these drafts, and these are the results. Yeah, nah, a draft has never gone right, like not even once. I mean, I would have expected at least one draft to come close, but no, 73 drafts, all 73 went wrong. All 73 had some massive bust somewhere in the top 10, and all 73 had some random breakout player drafted outside of the lottery. Here's some of the best drafts I could find in terms of talent matching up with the spot players were selected. The 1992 draft went right for 8 consecutive picks. Shaq went first, and he's undoubtedly the best player of his class. Then came Alonzo Mourning, a guy who's pretty much like mini Shaq, very powerful but less dominant, still an all-time legend. The next 2 selections were used on Christian Laettner and Jim Jackson, 2 players that had long careers and peaks where they were both borderline all-star talents. Laettner even was an all-star in 1997. They're in the same tier of talent, both below Shaq and Alonzo, but still pretty good. The 5th pick, LaFonso Ellis, was slightly worse than both of these two, having one 20-point season and enjoying a pretty long career, but outside of that singular pretty good year, didn't do all that much. His peak was quick and short-lived, so he's a little bit worse than both Laettner and Jackson. So far, things are going smoothly. Tom Gugliotta came 6th, and I'd say he's better than Laettner, Jackson, and Ellis, but it's close enough, and he's not objectively better than them. Look, I'm trying my best here. This was the best draft I could find in terms of order. There's gonna be a few stretches here, but it's close enough. 7th was Walt Williams, and he's on the same skill level of this group of players. He's another guy that had a pretty long career, put up 15 to 17 points at his peak, and generally was an above average player. Finally, 8th came Todd Day, who kicked off his career playing at a similar level to a lot of these guys, but he fell off a cliff pretty quickly, and his career ended pretty soon after, so he's kind of on a tier below all these players to come before him, which is exactly what we want. So there's the closest you'll get to things actually going right in an NBA draft. In 73 drafts, the most consecutive picks you'll find where the best player available was taken was 8, and even that's a stretch. Here's a couple more examples. The 2019 NBA draft seems to be going smoothly so far. Zion is probably the first best player, Ja Morant is the second best, RJ Barrett is the third, DeAndre Hunter is the fourth, and Darius Garland is the fifth. The closest thing you'll find to a bust in this class is Jarrett Culver and Jackson Hayes, and even they're still serviceable players. Of course, you have your guys like Tyler Hero, Kobe White, and Eric Paschall, all guys that you could argue are better than a bunch of the guys selected in the top 5 of this draft. But so far, you can make an argument that the top 5 best players in this class were top 5 picks. The 1968 draft is another solid example, as I'd say that the top 6 picks were indeed the top 6 players in that order. 2 NBA legends in Elvin Hayes and Wes Unseld went first and second, and third came a player that was a tier below them in terms of talent in Bob Kaufman, a 3-time All-Star that averaged 19 and 11 over the course of a 3-year span. Next came Tom Boerwinkle, who was a tier below Kaufman, never being an All-Star caliber guy, but he was a long-term above-average starting center, averaging 11 and 13 in his best year.
I'm Tom Boerwinkle. Remember, we're fighting for your life.
Zayd Abdul-Aziz was another long-term starting big that was drafted after Boerwinkle, and was almost as good as him, but his peak wasn't as good nor as long. Otto Moore was the 6th pick, and he was just about as good as Zayd Abdul-Aziz, and after that things begin to get out of control, but for 6 picks, things were on track. And in 73 drafts, this is only the second one that this can be said for. But when we get into some of the weirdest, most random draft orders, well, we have an abundance of classes to choose from. Let's start things off with the draft that literally started things off, the 1947 BAA draft. Yes, the BAA. This draft is so old that the NBA hadn't even adopted its current name yet when it happened. I looked through every single draft class, and this one was by far the worst. This league had no idea what it was doing when it first kicked things off, and teams especially didn't know how to draft players. Now get a load of this. The first NBA player ever drafted never played in the NBA. The first pick of the first draft went by the name of Clifton McNeely, and he turned down being the face of the league to become a high school basketball coach. At the time, that position offered him more money than being a pro player in the best league in the world. Man, have things changed. Could you imagine someone like Zion doing this? This was the most hyped player in his draft class, and he was just like, nope, see ya. This initial pick alone is enough to call this draft the weirdest ever, but things just continue to be weird throughout the entire thing. Glenn Selbo, the second overall pick, played a grand total of 13 games. The third pick played 99 games. The fourth pick never played in the NBA. The fifth pick played 48 games. I mean, we can just keep going. The entire draft is like this. I have no idea how the NBA found enough players to actually play in this first ever season, but with how many players refused to play, and with high schools offering athletes more money to coach, you have to imagine that things were getting at least close to shutting down, and thank God they didn't. The 1951 draft draft was pretty similar. The first overall pick never played in the NBA, the third pick never played either, the fourth pick played 12 games, the fifth pick played 11 games, the sixth pick played 12 games. These teams had no idea how to recruit players. But these were the early days of the league, so what else can you expect? Except teams still haven't figured out how to draft. I think the biggest example of this that I can give has already been shown. The simple fact that I couldn't find a draft that went right or even close to it is enough evidence of this. But for further proof, anybody remember the 2013 draft? We all thought that this draft was one of the worst ever, but as it turns out, the stars were just hidden away in the lower portion of this class. Both Giannis and Rudy Gobert were selected outside of the lottery, but within the lottery were more busts than actual players. I'm talking about Anthony Bennett, Otto Porter, Cody Zeller, Alex Len, Nerlens Noel, Ben McLemore, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Trey Burke, and Shabazz Muhammad. Now, I think most of you guys know I have a pretty controversial opinion on what it means to be a bust, but for most of these guys, it's really not even an argument. People like Anthony Bennett are busts, okay? Nearly every team really messed up in this draft, point blank. Here's one that's a little less talked about, the 2006 draft. Andrea Bargnani was the first pick, and Adam Morrison was the third. Tyrus Thomas, the fourth pick, only played 3 years, while Sheldon Williams, the fifth pick, put up career numbers of 4 and 4. Then we get into the territory of players that were so bad, you've never even heard of them. Have you ever heard of Patrick O'Brien? Well, he was the 9th pick of this draft and put up 2 points per game for his career in 4 seasons. For the 10th pick, Seattle took Mohamed Sene, who played 47 games. I don't know how players like O'Brien, Sene, and Tyrus Thomas aren't acknowledged as some of the biggest busts ever, but I guess people just really threw all their attention onto Bargnani, Morrison, and Sheldon Williams, 3 world-renowned NBA busts. So, at the end of the day, over 70 years after the first NBA draft, we still don't really know how to do it, and honestly, we probably never will. Certain GMs and teams have pretty good tactics and track records, but even Masai Ujiri has drafted busts like Bruno Caboclo and Jakob Poeltl. I came into this video excited to search through every draft and find the one that went a little bit right, but it still has never been done. There is no exact science to drafting players. It seems like there are times that the entire NBA community unanimously agrees that a certain guy is a top prospect and he just ends up being nothing. Shout out to Mo Bamba. If we ever do see a perfect NBA draft, we're just going to have to chalk it up to sheer luck. It will happen if we wait long enough, but the draft that was the closest to going right came in 1992. We had to wait 45 years to see the top 8 players get drafted in the first 8 slots, and even then, not really. I had to stretch and twist things for this to work. Latrell Sprewell was in the draft class and I had to just kind of like ignore him for this example to work out, so it's fair to say that it will take a while for things to actually go right. So, should we really freak out so heavily over something we know essentially nothing about? We're all ignorant, and all of these draft experts are only experts at guessing, and you can only be so good at guessing. A guess is still a guess. I mean, go do what you want, care about what you want to care about. I can't deny that the draft is a massive deal, but everything about it is just weird. It's hard for me to watch it and feel anything but a sense of confusion. I don't know how to feel, I don't know when I should be feeling something, and honestly, none of us do. We're all just guessing. I'm not here to bash the draft, but hopefully this video put into perspective that we just don't know a damn thing. 73 years deep into this, and we still are just as clueless. And with with that, we conclude this video. Thank you all for watching. Please do me a big favor and subscribe. It's so quick and easy and will ensure that you won't miss out on the rise of this channel. And with that all out of the way, stay safe out there.